Welcome again to our series, Leaders in Medicine Reflect upon the people and experiences which shape them. Today I'm delighted to welcome Sir John Tooke, our Vice Provost at University College London, who has just recently taken up the post. Sir John, thank you. Let me start by asking you about why and what influences there were that made you decide to study medicine and become a doctor.
Well, looking back, I suspect it was the fact that my mother was very ill when I was a teenager, 13 or 14 years of age, and didn't have very good medical care. On reflection, we now know that many children make the decision based on family illness and their experience, good or bad, of role models, doctors. So I suspect that that's what it was in my case.
Were there any key people who acted as an inspiration or as mentors or guides to you?
Indeed there were, and I think again it emphasises the importance of role models in medicine. Keith Pettingale, who was one of my consultants when I was a houseman, who was very interested in medical education, perhaps before it became as central as it is now.
And what attracted you to diabetes in particular?
Again, I think a family link. My brother-in-law developed diabetes in his early 20s, and I saw firsthand the personal impact of that illness on him. I've also always been deeply interested in vascular disease, and diabetes was one way that I could begin to realise that interest, there not being a specialty of vascular medicine when I started out, and so I could indulge my interest in the complications of diabetes, which are largely vascular, through pursuing that route. It was also, I think, a particular attraction to work with people who, for the most part, are well and try and help them preserve their health rather than simply dealing with people with end-stage problems.
And what do you think have been the main improvements and changes that we've seen in the care of patients with diabetes and their improvement in their quality of life?
I think there have been tremendous advances over the last 20 to 30 years, reflecting firstly a central recognition that the person with diabetes controls their own condition, and so through education and other empowerment mechanisms we can facilitate that. Second, the great importance of having integrated care along a pathway so that primary and secondary care are working closely together to the patient's advantage. And thirdly, the major therapeutic and diagnostic advances that have come. So, for example, the ability to screen for retinopathy, the ability to screen for the very earliest signs of kidney disease and get in there with some preventative treatment.
And what about the Peninsula Medical School? How did that come about?
Well, it was a unique, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The government declared the need for more doctors, and in 1998 we bid to be one of the institutions that would take on that role, establishing what would be the first new medical school for some 30 years. I have to say I entered that fray thinking that we would do our best, put in a bid, and then I'd go back to my day job, which was very enjoyable, leading a research team and leading a clinical service in diabetes. But we got through that first hurdle, and so for 18 months I then committed to leading the development of a curriculum and a full business case so that we could try and get over the next hurdle.
Your report, Aspiring to Excellence, gave the medical profession a sense that they could again take control of what the future would be for medicine and medical training. How did you manage to put it all together in such a short time when you had so many other responsibilities at the same time?
I think firstly through putting into practice a lesson I've learnt during my professional career, that of taking expert advice, and I was very lucky to get excellent advice from Sir Ian Kennedy, who undertook the Bristol inquiry, who basically told me the rules of the game, how to set this up. Second, recognising one's own limitations and assembling a panel of experts who did a fantastic job in supporting me and applying their wisdom to the problems that existed. And I think thirdly, which is part of the solution to the problem, is engaging with the profession more generally, ensuring that we we got every viewpoint expressed, because after all, through that engagement you can effect the changes that are necessary to make things better.
So Sir John, what would you say were your main drivers?
I think the reason I entered medicine was because I wanted to do the best for patients. I think as I've gone through my career, I've translated that desire in different ways. So initially, and I very much enjoyed it, patient contact and simply clinical practice was my focus. I then became increasingly frustrated that we don't know enough to do this well enough, and therefore I think that drove my research interests. And subsequently I realised that actually you can have more impact in terms of health gain if you get the organisation right, and if you can create functional teams and influence policy.
Now, we're all delighted to see you here at UCL, but what do you see as the main challenges over the next few years?
One of the biggest challenges is going to be coping with the post-recessionary environment that we're entering, and yet capitalising on the tremendous resources there are at UCL. Some fantastic science, fantastic facilities, fantastic partnerships and collaborations.
And finally, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about how you manage to achieve a good balance of work and life. Now, I do understand that many people find that work and life are quite integrated.
I agree, it's incredibly important, because at times in my life when I've worked very, very long hours, I find what goes is any sense of creativity, and you need, I think, creativity to find the solutions to some of the problems that one faces. I'm very deliberate about holidays. I always take holidays. I try and keep at least part of the weekend free, and as everybody, I have my hobbies and relaxations and so forth. I'm a fly fisherman, so if I had to choose one thing I like to do in an indulgent way, it would be that. And that's very different from this environment.
So John, thank you again for your time. And of course, I wish you all the best here at University College London.
Thank you.